Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam came upon his companions sitting talking amongst themselves, and he asked them, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "We're talking about the subject of the signs of the last day." And then he said, in a very well-known hadith, Sahih Muslim, the last day would not come until, and he mentioned 10 signs. These 10, as I said to you earlier, have not been given to us in the chronological sequence in which they will occur. In this book, Signs of the Last Day in the Modern Age, we have attempted in some of the essays in this book, there are about 32 essays, we have attempted to try to put them, to the extent that it is possible to do so, in some form of a chronological order. Which comes first, which comes second, which comes last, and so on. The signs were: number one, Dajjal, the Antichrist, the false Messiah. Number two, Gog and Magog, or Yajooj and Majooj. Number three, the return of the Son of Mary. Number four, Dukhan, or smoke. Number five, Dabbatul Ard, the creature of the earth, beast of the earth. Number six, that the sun would rise from the west. Number 7, 8, and 9. 3, Khusuf, plural of Khas, that the earth sinks down, swallows what it swallows, and therefore an earthquake which precipitates a sinking of the earth. One in the east, one in the west, and the third in Arabia. And number 10, a fire which would come out of Yemen and would drive people to their place of assembly. These are the 10, and they're known as the 10 major signs. And among these 10 is Gog and Magog. Our retreat has been organized to attempt to explain the reality of the world today. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam gave to us from his lips the story of the event of Tamim ad-Dari, which we narrated to you on Thursday. And we know that at that time, at the early period of Medina, Dajjal was still in chains on an island, not yet released. When he is released, however, we would expect that we would be informed, if not directly, then at least indirectly, subtly. It's not by accident that the name Dajjal is not in the Quran. Keep them guessing. And we did get a subtle indicator of the release of Dajjal. The Prophet ﷺ suspected a Jewish boy, not Christian, not Hindu, not Buddhist, not Muslim, a Jewish boy to be Dajjal. He said Dajjal is going to be a Jew. Yeah. And he took with him Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu to go and speak to the boy. His name was Ibn Sayyad. He lived in Medina. And when he went to meet Ibn Sayyad, he questioned him. He suspected that he was Dajjal. The boy was rather impertinent in his replies. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, of course, if he was alive today, he'd be called a terrorist. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, give me permission, I'll cut off his head." The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi responded and said, "No, Umar, don't do that." Now listen to the words which follow. If he is Dajjal, this hypothetical statement, if he is Dajjal, could not be made if Dajjal is still in chains. If Dajjal is still in chains, the Prophet would know that. And therefore, this hypothetical statement, if he is Dajjal, would be impossible to make. If he is Dajjal, you cannot kill him. And if he is not Dajjal, it will be sinful to kill him. There is a subtle message from the Prophet ﷺ in this event, indicating to us in a manner that we would understand, not them, that the release of Dajjal has taken place. When the release of Dajjal takes place, that's bad news for those who rejected Muhammad ﷺ, because he's not a Jew. Now punishment will begin. That ummah loses its validity. Tilka ummatun qad khalat. A new ummah is born. Huwa ijtabakum. And now punishment begins. And this punishment will continue until the last day. And it's going to be the worst possible punishment. And we have to learn, develop the capacity to be able to read and understand the historical process after Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. This is what Allah says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. And your Lord has now announced that He's now going to release against them those who rejected Muhammad Banu Israel. He's going to release against them those who are going to inflict upon them the worst possible punishment. And it will continue until the last day. And so we now have to read history to recognize the signs of Allah unfolding in the historical process. How can a mufassir, writing a tafsir of the Quran, fathom what the Quran has to say concerning signs of Allah which have not as yet unfolded in the world? How can you possibly say that the books of tafsir have exhausted the knowledge that the Quran has come to transmit to mankind? It is not possible. As the signs of Allah unfold, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. as the signs of Allah unfold with greater and greater punishment, escalating punishment upon Banu Israel, upon those who rejected Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, we have to have eyes with which to see and recognize those signs, and then correlate them with the verses of the Quran relating to them. So now we turn away from Dajjal to the other side. In Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, we were introduced to Gog and Magog. This book an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world, it's an attempt on my part to explain the subject. It's not the final word. I may have to write a second edition of this book and a critical assessment of this book to point out the parts of the book which are valid and other parts which you may want to question is something that I will benefit from. But a Muslim will not turn to this book and just try to find faults in it. Look, where can I find a little crack so I can tear it apart? You do not disrespect truth in such a way. You do not treat your brother in such a way. Not even a non-Muslim. You would read what he has to say, and you would recognize those portions which are acceptable as truth, and those portions which are questionable, and if you have to respond, even critically, you would do so with respect for knowledge, not destructive. In Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, the subject of Gog and Magog was introduced. The pagan Arabs did not know how to recognize the validity of the claim that Muhammad is indeed a prophet. So they finally decided to seek some help from the rabbis in Medina, who said, ask him 3 questions, one of which was about a traveler who traveled to the 2 ends of the earth. When the questions were asked, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the answers. And those answers reached the rabbis in Medina. And we have been waiting for more than 1400 years now. Rabbi, did you hear the answer? Rabbi, what is your response? Is the answer to the question correct, yes or no? I'm still waiting for an answer. Who is this great traveler? وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. And they question thee about someone who possesses 2 qarn. Qarn can mean horn. But has Allah used the word qarn in the Quran to mean horn? No, He's never done that. Not at all. Well, then does qarn have any other meaning? Yes, it does. It means an age, an epoch, a time. And that is how it is used in the Quran. So a man who impacts upon 2 ages, Dhul Qarnayn, and he has faith in Allah. But he's endowed by Allah with power to pursue any objective he chooses to pursue. And now he travels to the 2 ends of the earth. And the Quran gives us a taste of what the world could have been like when power rested on the foundations of faith. How is power used when power rests on the foundations of faith? He traveled to the setting of the sun to the west, because the sun normally rises in the east. Even in Mali, is it? In the east, yeah. And he traveled to a place where there was water, a large body of water. You can't go beyond that. And the water was described. And our early Mufassirun were able to recognize that it was the Black Sea. It was dark, murky colored water, the Black Sea. And so you're traveling along the Caucasus Mountains. In this book, I have actually showed photographs of that area which is traveled. And there he came across a people, and Allah says, well, how will you use power with these people? And he responded and he said, those who commit acts of wickedness, of oppression, of dhulm, I will punish them. And when they return to you, you will also punish them. And so power is used to punish the oppressor. Did you hear that? And when power is used to punish the oppressor, there will be harmony between the world here and the world above. And then he said, I will reward those who have faith and who are righteous in conduct. Treat them nicely. And so when power rests on the foundations of faith, power will promote the way of life of the true one true religion. Power will promote and preserve the righteous way of life, the way of life of piety. What a world it could have been. And then he traveled in the opposite direction, in the direction of the rising of the sun. And since he travels to the end, it follows that he must also have traveled to a body of water beyond which he cannot go. It's the two ends of the earth. And we've identified that. I don't have the time to provide all the evidence, but in this book we recognize it as the Caspian Sea. On this side is the Black Sea, on that side is the Caspian Sea, and between them two is the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasus, Caucasian, white Caucasian. Why are they all called white Caucasian? And they have no links with the Caucasus. Caucasus, Caucasian. And over here he came across the people for whom we had provided no sitter min duniha, other than the natural sitter. A people living an essentially primitive way of life, with no protection from the elements, other than that which is normal and natural for primitive people. When you come to such a people, and you have power, and your power rests on the foundations of faith, how do you relate with them? Number one, Zulkarnain had the compassion, the wisdom, the common sense to allow them to live unmolested, undisturbed, their primitive way of life. He didn't take their land from them at gunpoint and then reduce them to people living on reservations in North America. Am I wrong to point this out? Are you going to be annoyed with me for pointing this out? When Europe went to North America, that's what they found. A people living a primitive way of life, a natural way of life. They will hunt for only that much that they needed to eat. And they, excuse the word, they worshipped nature. Not worship in the blasphemous sense of the word, but they respected nature. They loved the clouds, they loved the flowers, they loved the earth. They respected the environment. For them it was blasphemous to corrupt the river and to pour raw sewage or treated sewage into a river or to the coastal waters. These people who didn't have PhDs from Harvard and Yale would look in horror. Are these human beings or are these beasts with their cell phones and their internet and their flying donkeys? I'm not impressed by all of that scientific and technological advancement. It doesn't impress me if you're taking sewage and pouring it into a river. You're not a human being. Can't you respect the earth? And so Zulkarnain had the compassion, the good sense, the wisdom to protect their way of life and leave them undisturbed. But more than that, suppose these people are sitting on oil in Brazil, and there's so much oil in the Caspian. Are you going to drive them off the land so you can exploit the oil? They're doing that every day. Every day. When power rests on the foundations of faith, then the rights of a human being supersede your rights to the economic resources of the land in which they live. Their rights come first. The human being comes first. And the oil on which he sits is not as important as his right as a human being. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. Allah says, He left them as they were. And we understood how He responded. The language of the Quran is agonizingly brief. I can't find any other word to use. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. Agonizingly brief. And then he traveled in a third direction, but the rabbis had only spoken about two ends of the earth. The reason why they asked about two is because they wanted to know whether you knew about the third. And Allah now responds and gives them the third. He traveled in a direction that we can recognize to be north. And there's evidence in this book to provide why it is north. And he came across a people between two mountain ranges, Saddain, and a pass between two mountain ranges. And there was a unique characteristic of this people by which you could identify them 5,000 years later. They spoke a language that was unique. It was a language unrelated to all the linguistic families around them. It was not Indo-Aryan. It was a solitary, unique language. لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. Today we can recognize the Georgian language on the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains to be precisely that unique language, unrelated to all the families of languages around Georgia. But these people then spoke to him and said to him, O Zulkarnain, surely Gog and Magog are perpetrating acts of fasad in our land, corrupting and destroying. Can you help us? Can you build a barrier in this pass between the mountains to keep them out? Zulkarnain should have said, I don't need to build any barrier, I've got power. I'll just go in there and beat the living daylights out of them. Because he has the power. Allah gave him the power. But he didn't do that. He agreed to build a barrier, indicating that they also had power. And there were limitations to his power in relation to them. There is something mysterious going on here. There are lessons to be learned by a mind and the heart which is restless to use the Quran to explain the world today. They said, we'll pay you. He said, I don't need your money. And then we left the Quran and we went to Sahih Muslim. And in Sahih Muslim, Allah said Hadith al-Qudsi about Gog and Magog, which explains why Zulkarnain agreed to build the barrier. I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can destroy them. These creatures, when they are released into the world, with their power, would utilize that power given to them by Allah to fulfill a mission Allah has given to them. And that mission, that function is there in the verse in Surah Al-A'raf. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. And your Lord has announced He's now going to release into the world those who are going to inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. So you cannot destroy them, not until the last day. Gog and Magog, of course, are human beings, not some strange creatures with ears from here to San Fernando and tall from here to the clouds. They are human beings. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, they are Banu Adam. Banu Adam, human beings. So Zulkarnain says, okay, I'll build a barrier. But bring me blocks of iron, zubarul hadid. Bring me blocks of iron. Hadid is something strange. Hadid is not only a businessman in Port of Spain. We have lots of Hadid in Port of Spain, Syrian and Lebanese businessmen with the name Hadid. But Allah says about Hadid in the Quran, iron. Hadid is iron. Something strange. He says, and He's not said this about any other mineral substance on earth, about any other metal. He said, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, and we sent down iron. Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahimahullah, in his book Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society, and we still have the Pakistani edition, and it belonged to Maulana Sulaimani, and he's selling it at a very reasonable price. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, Maulana Ansari says this may indicate that iron did not constitute part of the original constitution of the earth, and that iron came subsequently, perhaps through a meteorite, in accordance with the divine plan, strikes the earth. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, so bring me blocks of iron. And with the blocks of iron he built a barrier which barred the pass between the two mountains. And after he had built the barrier, he said, now blow with your bellows. And he took copper, which would prevent the iron from rusting. We got some engineers here as well. And then the molten copper was poured on the iron barrier. And when it was built, he said, as Alexander the Great could not have said, have you got peanuts in your head? How could Alexander say, هذا رحمة من ربي? This barrier is built in accordance with Allah's rahmah, because of Allah's kindness. Now listen to what follows. Could never have come from the lips of Alexander. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي. But when that time comes of which my Lord has warned, when Allah is ready to now release into the world those who are now going to inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. سوء العذاب. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّاءَ. Allah is going to bring down a barrier. And Allah's warning will then come to pass. Then follows an ayah which qualifies perhaps as the most difficult in the whole Quran. Allah then says, after Zulkarnain said, هَذَا رَحْمَةٌ مِنْ رَبِّي وَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّاءَ وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ حَقًّا. Allah then says, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. There's nothing in the Quran as difficult as this. You have to study a lot of international politics to be able to penetrate this. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Yajooj, Majooj is a wave. When the barrier is brought down and Gog and Magog are released, then a day will begin, and a day with Allah could be like 1,000 years in your counting. At the conclusion of which Gog and Magog are going to come against each other, like waves crashing against each other. A Gog and Magog confrontation, a Gog and Magog fight it out. The Bible speaks about that. And so this appears to be one of the meanings. That at the end of history there's going to be a catastrophic collision between two forces of equal power and indestructible power. Two forces that are equally powerful. When we leave the Quran and go back to the Hadith, we find about Gog and Magog that they are people whose power, this is back in the Quran. In Yajooj and Majooj mufsiduna fil ard. They are people who have power, indestructible power, but they use their power in a way which is opposite to that of Zulkarnain. We just described to you how Zulkarnain would use power when power rests on the foundations of faith. But these people use power in exactly the opposite way. They use power to commit fasad. They use power to oppress. If power on the foundations of faith was used to punish the oppressor, now a second age emerges. That was Qarn number 1, this is Qarn number 2, Qarnain. An age is going to come at the end of history when power in the world will rest on foundations, such foundations that power will be used to oppress. Zulqarnain. Power will be used to target those who have faith and whose conduct is righteous. It does not matter whether you are Pakistani or whether you're a Jimmy Carter. It does not matter. Once you have faith, once you have decency, once you have a standard of righteousness, it matters not whether you are Egyptian or you are Ramsey Clark. They're going to come after you. Whether you're black or whether you're white makes no difference. They're going to come after you. Because power will now be used to target those who have faith and whose conduct is righteous. And Gog and Magog will act differently from Zulqarnain on that side as well, that other journey. That the entire world of primitive peoples are now going to be butchered. A time is going to come in history where those who have eyes will see that the primitive way of life is going to disappear. The primitive people are going to be herded into reservations. A time is going to come where respect for the earth and the resources of the earth is going to disappear. And the exploitation of resources will take precedence over the rights of human beings. When that time comes, Allah's Messenger spoke. And he told us about something that will occur on Judgment Day. A very strange Hadith al-Qudsi, repeated 4 times in Sahih Bukhari, 4 times in Sahih Bukhari. How come they don't teach this subject? That on Judgment Day Allah will speak to Adam alayhi salam and will say to Adam alayhi salam, take out the people for the hellfire. And Adam alayhi salam would ask and say, oh Allah, how many are they? And then Allah would reply and say to Adam alayhi salam, out of every 1,000, take 999 for the hellfire. You don't believe me? Huh? Go and read it. It is there in Sahih Bukhari and it is repeated 4 times from 4 different sources. It is a hadith which is mutawatir. Out of every 1,000, take 999 for the hellfire. I suggest that this is an important subject for us to study, wouldn't you? The companions were terrified. In those days we had hearts that used to shake and shiver. But now we're eating cornflakes. So the companions were terrified. And then he looked at them and he smiled. And he said, good news for you. The one for Jannah will be from you, meaning from those who follow the truth, the religion of Abraham alayhi salam, who follow the law which was sent down. And each law superseded the other law, and the final law came to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This does not mean that this is superior to that one. We fast this way, and they fasted that way. This may be a little better, but it does not indicate that that one was bad. مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ أَوْ نُنْسِهَا نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. So, those who follow the truth, you are the ones who will go to heaven. The 1 in 1,000. But now listen to what he said. Listen carefully. He said that the 999 would all be the people of Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog. In other words, success in the last age does not lie in numbers. When you see the herd, large numbers moving in that direction, you go in the opposite direction. Because numerical superiority, the 999, that's the hellfire. The 1 for Jannah is only 1. But it also indicates that in the last age, Gog and Magog are going to succeed in getting all of mankind to enter into their embrace. Because he said 999 will be Gog and Magog. So the original Gog and Magog are going to replicate themselves. I use the word carbon copies. And eventually all of mankind will be living one way of life. And it will be a way of life into the hellfire. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said there will be those who will be standing there and inviting you to come to the way of life that will take you into the hellfire. Mankind will follow them. He said it. So the global society, process of globalization, has very sinister connotations attached to it. When Gog and Magog are released into the world, there are many, if you'll allow me to use this word, there are many footprints by which we would be able to recognize them when they're released into the world. But before we go to looking for the footprints, let us go to the Prophet ﷺ in Medina. He is asleep. And in his sleep he has a ru'ya, a vision. And whatever he saw in that vision was terrible. Oh my gosh. Whatever he saw in that vision was really terrible. Because he woke up from the sleep with his face flushed red. Something terrible is coming. But the Arab will suffer the most. The Arab. Woe unto the Arabs. Wailul lil Arab. Min sharrin qad iktaraba. because of a great evil which will now embrace them eventually. And then he raised his hands like this and said, today a hole has been made in the rudder of Zulkarnain, of Yajooj and Majooj. Rudder. The barrier or the dam. You have a dam and you build something to keep the water, then it becomes a dam. Today a hole has been made in that barrier built by Zulkarnain. And this is repeated in the Quran, in the Hadith, 8 times, this Hadith. It is also mutawatir, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. It is muttafaqun alayh, indicating that in the lifetime of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, not only was Dajjal released, but also the Gog and Magog was released. The barrier was brought down in the lifetime of the Prophet. Well then, if they are brought down, the barrier is brought down and Gog and Magog are released, then we should be looking for footprints, Footprints. Well, let's leave Surah Al-Kahf and go to the other parts of the Quran, searching for the ayat on Yajooj and Majooj. And we find in Surah Al-Anbiya only one more reference to Gog and Magog, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about a town. Remember the town? And he had destroyed the town, punished it by destroying it, and then expelled the people of the town. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا. And then he banned the people of the town, that they could never return to reclaim that town as their own. أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. They are in a state of permanent exclusion, banned from returning to that town. Hatta, until when? Hatta إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج, until Gog and Magog are released. وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. And Gog and Magog, when they are released, they spread out in every direction, which is one meaning. And if you spread out in every direction, then you'll take control of the world. The land, the sea, the air. Read Toynbee. Read Arnold Toynbee. Read a book called Civilization on Trial. I'm giving you good books to read, incidentally, not comic books. Read Arnold Toynbee, the British historian. Read a book entitled Civilization on Trial. You should get it on the internet. It was written somewhere around 80 years, 90 years ago, 1935, somewhere around 70, 80 years ago. And in that book, Arnold Toynbee points out that modern Western civilization has risen upon the world with a mission to take control of the whole world. And he says, the land, the sea, the air, everything. He said it in that book. وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. They spread out in all directions, and with the indestructible power they take control of the world. For the first time in history, one people will control the whole world. Nobody ever did that before. The other meaning is that they descend from every height. So they target you and they impose themselves upon you. You can't get away from them. Which town is it? Which town is it that is linked with Gog and Magog, which is the biggest footprint of all? Which town? We used this methodology, that we looked at all the ahadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ pertaining to Gog and Magog, to see whether there was any town mentioned by him that is linked to Gog and Magog. And when we had studied all the ahadith, we found only one town, only one in the hadith. And it is Baytul Maqdis, Jerusalem, Al-Quds. And so we said, well, here is a hypothesis which is already resting on fairly firm foundations, since this is the town mentioned in the hadith that is connected with Gog and Magog. So let's look and try on the shoe and see whether it fits. Why can't we do that? So then we looked at Jerusalem, and we found that this is a town which was destroyed by Allah, and Banu Israel were expelled from the town, even though Allah had given the land to them. The first time that they violated the covenant with fasad, وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ وَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. The first time they committed fasad, He expelled them and then banned them from returning. For 100 years they were in Babylon. And then He allowed them to return. And then the second period of fasad. And then He punished them again and He expelled them. And having expelled them this time, He left the door open for them. Despite all your wickedness, it is still possible. Asa Rabbukum ayyarhamakum. It is still possible for you to be forgiven and have mercy. There's only one door. This is the door, a man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you shut that door, then tilka ummatun qad khalat. You finished. Divine punishment will now begin. And if you are taken for a ride and brought back to the Holy Land by Gog and Magog, and you return with your fasad, then guess what I'll do with you? وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. If you return with your fasad, your wickedness, your oppression, I will return with my punishment. The first time was an army that punished them. The second time was an army that punished them. The third time it will be an army that will punish them. I don't need the hadith from Khorasan. Quran is enough for me. Yes, I said it to you before. A Muslim army will now attack and destroy the state of Israel. And so, we recognize the town to be Jerusalem. And we ask the question, who are those who liberated Jerusalem and brought Banu Israel back to Jerusalem? If you can recognize who they are, you have recognized Gog and Magog. There are other footprints by which you can recognize them. that they commit fasad, perpetrate fasad. Fasad in the political system, fasad in the economy, fasad in the money that you use, fasad in the food that you eat, fasad in the male-female relationship, ending with a man marrying a man. Anyhow you turn, it's fasad. There are other footprints by which we can recognize Gog and Magog. They're very thirsty, said the Prophet ﷺ. They'll drink up all the water of the world. They'll pass by a river and drink it dry. Well, isn't it time for us to do a little bit of homework and check out what's happening in the fresh water part of the world? Are our rivers drying up? Are our lakes drying up? Is there a decrease in the amount of fresh water available in the world? When last have you checked out the subject? The evidence is overwhelming that tomorrow people are not going to be fighting wars over oil. No, it's going to be over water. Yeah. But there is one body of water which supersedes all others in importance. And now we come to the one hadith that has created a problem for the world of Islamic scholarship. The hadith is in Sahih Muslim. It speaks of the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And then he kills Dajjal. And then after he has killed Dajjal, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ. Ba'atha does not mean release. Ba'atha means to send. But somehow or the other, everybody have come to the conclusion that after Nabi Isa alayhi salam kills Dajjal, that Allah will now release Ba'atha, Gog and Magog. And when He releases them, the first will pass by the Sea of Galilee. If you are in the area of the Caucasus Mountains and you're moving towards the Sea of Galilee, you're going south. South. Okay? So Gog and Magog, so Zulkarnain in his third journey had to have gone north. The first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee, but in Arabic it's not the Sea of Galilee. That's an English word used by the Christians. The Jews don't use Sea of Galilee. The Jews call it Lake Kinneret. Kinneret. And in the Ahadith it is known as Buhayrat al-Tabariya, Lake Tiberias. All three names refer to the same body of water. The first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee and start to drink the water. And by the time the last of them pass, they will say, there used to be water here. I think this is a fairly simple footprint to recognize. Fairly simple, like the tall buildings, that when you see the water level in the Sea of Galilee going down and down and down. And when it reaches the point of no return, that it has crossed the level now that the Sea of Galilee could ever be revived, it's only a matter of time for it to die, to dry up. Then you know that you are close now to the end. What is the water level in the Sea of Galilee now? The answer is the water level in the Sea of Galilee has already crossed the point of no return. That's how low it is. Indicating that Gog and Magog have been passing. When they pass by the Sea of Galilee, where are they going? They're going to Jerusalem. When they go to Jerusalem, what are you doing with the water? You drank all that water? Huh? We're dealing here with religious symbolism. It's not the actual drinking of the water. Rather, it is the consumption of water. Israel said, we're going to make the deserts green. Those Arabs couldn't do that. They are dum-dums, the Arabs. And we have the scientific and technological know-how. We can change the desert and make it green. The Saudis are now growing wheat in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but you do it at a price. The price you pay for making the desert green is that you will be consuming more water than nature can replenish. We're going to give you the industrial economy. The industrial economy consumes more water than nature can replenish. And so you're tying a rope around your own neck. Around the world today, that excessive consumption of water through the industrial economy and the mismanagement of water to turn the deserts into greenery is reducing the water supply of fresh water. But in the case of the Sea of Galilee, we have evidence as dazzling as the sunshine that Gog and Magog have not only been released, but that Gog and Magog have been heading for Jerusalem for a long time now. That Gog and Magog now control Jerusalem. We have been engaged so far in what can only be described as a fascinating journey. A journey which could not have been undertaken for all these 1400 years. A journey which can only be undertaken now, after the town, after the return of the people to the town, only now. So if you do not find this information in the books of tafsir, do not be surprised. We return to that crucially important hadith, which is repeated something like 8 times in Sahih Bukhari alone, in which the Prophet ﷺ was asleep at the home of his wife Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha. And he saw something terrible in his sleep. And he woke up from his sleep with his face flushed red. And he uttered these words, these ominous words, that every Palestinian is quite familiar with. He said, Wailul lil Arab, woe unto the Arabs, in sharrin qad iktaraba, because of a shar, evil, great evil, which is now qareeb, which will now become close, iktaraba. And then he raised his hands and made a hole like this and said, today a hole has been made in the rudder, the barrier bit by Zulkarnain, indicating that Allah is now bringing down the barrier. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّاءَ. Allah is now bringing down the barrier. And once Allah brings down the barrier, the release of Gog and Magog will commence. She asked Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha, Anuhlika, will we be destroyed? Wafina salihun, and while they are righteous people in our midst, would we still be destroyed? He said, Na'am. Yes, the Arabs will be destroyed. When? إِذَا كَثُرَ الْخَبَثِ. When the timeline has been given by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He has actually given us the timeline for the destruction of the Arabs. When khabath prevails in the world, when the world is inundated with khabath, filth, the filth that comes from pornography, for example, khabath. And so you just have to look around you to see how close it is. How close it is. We are now living in a world more filthy than anything that mankind could ever have dreamed of. And the filth is coming from one direction. It's coming from that direction, from the direction of those who now today control power in the world. The head of the filth is, of course, pornography. It is also homosexuality and lesbianism. It is also feminine nudity, women are dressed and yet naked. It is also a preference, a strange and mysterious preference for sexual relations in public rather than private. That people would have sexual intercourse in public like donkeys, he said. That's coming. A strange and mysterious fascination with having sexual relations in a motor car parked in a park. So people passing by can take a look. It's happening already. And it's coming from one direction. It's coming from those who liberated Jerusalem and then brought Banu Israel back to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land, who presided over the creation of the State of Israel and who have protected Israel until Israel could grow to become superpower and be poised to take over the rule over the world. Those who today rule the world are a mysterious dual alliance. Dual. It is a mysterious Jewish-Christian alliance which has emerged in Europe and which has spread its tentacles around the world. They are the ones who are bringing the Khabath to such an extent that it is now almost prevailing in the world. And so as we see the filth spreading, we know that the moment is at hand for the destruction of the Arabs. Waylul lil Arab. When the destruction of the Arabs takes place, the critics of this book will be silenced. But I want to take you now back to that spot in the Caucasus Mountains, because we want to fine-tune our attempt to identify Gog and Magog. It is not sufficient to say that Gog and Magog are the European Christians and European Jews. No. Because amongst the European Christians and European Jews, there will be those who become Muslims, there will be those who are our friends and allies. Do not make the mistake of declaring of all Jews that they are your enemies and all Christians, they are your enemies. That will be quite foolish. An American woman went to Israel and stood up in front of an Israeli bulldozer to protect a Palestinian home. And the bulldozer ran over her. The media, of course, buried it. Can you say of that woman that she is your enemy? Could you say of that woman that she is Gog and Magog, but she is white and she is American? So we will have peanuts in our heads if we make a blanket statement, all white people, or all Americans, or all Christians, or all Jews. Not at all. Don't fall in that trap. Let's fine-tune to try to locate Gog and Magog. We have to go to the Caucasus Mountains. And there at the Caucasus Mountains we have to look for a people with power. There have to be a people whose power was greater than any other power in the world at that time. We have to look for a people who will eventually be moving from that northern area and moving towards Jerusalem. Shortly after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, something very mysterious happened in that part of the world that historians have chosen to bury. A tribe called the Khaza chose to embrace Judaism. And so the world witnessed for the first time the very strange phenomenon of a non-Semitic people becoming Jews. Non-Semitic becoming Jews. The genetic research is available on the internet. Anyone can study it. You had conferences, medical conferences, which were organized to study these people, their genetic composition. They had a genetic composition which was unique in all of mankind. No people in the world were like them. This is scientific research. And these people, the Khaza, chose to convert to Judaism, but they did so not for any religious reasons. They were not so much interested in the Kitab and to follow the law. They embraced Judaism for purposes of political expediency. They were sandwiched between Islam and Christianity, Byzantine Christianity, and they chose Judaism. These European Jews who have no racial, biological connection with the Banu Israel multiplied. وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ Nasl, they multiplied and breeded to such an extent that today 9 in every 10 Jews in the world, 90% or more, are European Jews. They outnumber the Semitic Jews by 9 to 1 or 10 to 1. These European Jews, if you look at the list of names of Nobel Prizes for science, for literature, would you name it, you will find that these are people who far exceed the rest of mankind in their intellectual brilliance, in their academic achievements, in their scientific research. They are a people different from the rest of mankind. And then you find that these Khaza who became Jews also chose to become Christians. So you have the Khaza infiltrating the camp of Judaism and infiltrating the camp of Christianity as well. And from the ranks of these Khaza Jews and Khaza Christians, the emergence of the Jewish-Christian alliance can be traced. It is this Jewish-Christian alliance, Khaza, which eventually gives birth to the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement has absolutely nothing to do with Banu Israel. It is an essentially and an exclusively European achievement. It is these Khaza who, having become Jews, first Jews and then Christians, who built an empire that was the most powerful in Europe and Central Asia. And when the armies of Islam had simultaneously defeated the two superpowers in the world, the Persian Empire and Byzantium, and had emerged as the most powerful military force in the world, Khaza blocked our way. We could not defeat them. And so it would be quite correct to say that the Khaza demonstrated a military power without equal in the world at that time. It is from this part of the world that they spread out. They spread out to Eastern Europe, they spread to Russia, and eventually crossed the sea to the United States. And they are at the heart of the revolutions which transformed Europe from Christendom into modern Western civilization. They are at the heart of the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, which overturned Christianity in Russia. They are at the heart of the French Revolution, in consequence of which the back of the Christian church is broken. The prohibition of riba is now consigned to the garbage bin. And they are at the heart of the creation of the Zionist movement. It is these Khaza, Jewish and Christian, who now move to the Holy Land, assisted by a strange and mysterious Jewish Holocaust. And the history of that will one day be revealed on Judgment Day. How much was their input into the Holocaust? So that you have an exodus now of these European Jews to the Holy Land. When the state of Israel comes into being, who it is who controls power in Israel? Not the Oriental Jews, the darker skinned Jews. No, they are second-class citizens. The ones who control power in Israel are the European Jews. There is the last part of this analysis, which is absolutely fascinating. I have to confess that I enjoyed writing this book. I know that we'll have to write a second edition because there are very important parts which are left out for size. But here is the hadith that after Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns and after he kills Dajjal, the hadith says, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ Yajooj and Majooj. Allah will send Gog and Magog. I think the meaning here is He will send them now to their final destruction. This is the sending. And they will pass by the Sea of Galilee, which is when it's going to go dry. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam will be targeted. They won't spare him. And he will go up the mountain, which is a mountain in Baytul Maqdis, Sahih Muslim. And the believers will go up the mountain with him. And Gog and Magog will then say, now listen carefully, we have killed those on earth. Now let us kill those in the heavens above. And they will shoot their arrows up into the sky. And Allah will allow the arrows to come back down with blood. And then Nabi Isa alayhi salam will make dua to Allah to destroy them. And Allah will send something like a tiny little insect, a virus, something, which attacks them at the top of the spine. And they display an amazing incapacity to defend themselves. The immune system seemed to have collapsed completely. And this little insignificant biological attack, that's all it takes. And they fall down, paralyzed. And by next morning, not only are they dead, but their bodies are decomposing and smelling stink. And then Allah's messenger, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, will pray to Allah and he will send birds, prehistoric birds, whose necks will be like camels. And they will pick up these bodies and take them where Allah ordains that they be disposed of. But now we have a reconciliation between the two. And the emergence of a Jewish-Christian alliance. Zionist alliance. How is it possible? Answer, because you had some in this camp, and you had some in that camp. And they were both Khazar. Now this is a very important event in history that has happened. That European Judaism and European Christianity have reconciled and they formed an alliance. And it is that alliance which today controls the world. That alliance also wants Russia to bend down. And that alliance wants China to also bend down. And if Russia and China don't bow down, they won't fight to that. Because they want to rule the world. That is the alliance which brought the Jews back to the Holy Land, Banu Israel, back to the Holy Land. That is the alliance. So Gog and Magog are located, yes, in the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance. The Quran must explain this strange event. The Quran explains all things. Because here is a force ruling the world. almost indestructible in its power. Does the Quran speak about it? All that I'm doing here tonight is putting the Quran before you. I can't be wrong in doing that tonight. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah speaks and He says, O you who have faith in Allah, do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. Is it there in the Quran? It is? Good. Question. Is Allah speaking about all Jews? And is He speaking about all Christians? If you go to all the tafasir of the Quran, you come to the conclusion that Allah is speaking about all Jews. And He's speaking about all Christians if you go to study those tafasir. But if you use the right methodology, you know Allah is not speaking about all Jews. No! If a Jew stands up against oppression, he's my brother. He and I can form an alliance. We can stand together. If he is a Jew and he stands up against the oppressor, there is no prohibition. If a Christian stands up against the oppressor, he's my brother. I can form an alliance with him. Allah is not speaking about all Jews and all Christians. No, 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 no. Well then, which Jews and which Christians is He speaking about? When He says, do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. Am I allowed to tell you the answer? Am I? Is there in the Quran in the words which follow? بَعَدُوهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. But you've heard this on YouTube so many times, you're tired of hearing it from me. So many times you've heard it on YouTube, it's nothing new for you. Allah is speaking about such Jews and such Christians who themselves become friends and allies of each other. And He's saying, these are the Jews and these are the Christians with whom you are prohibited from maintaining friendly ties and being allies. Okay? Do we have a Jewish-Christian alliance in the world today? Yes, we do. It is the European Zionist Jewish-Christian alliance. They are the ones who rule the world today. And they are the ones who are putting pressure on Russia and on China. The power. They are the ones that Allah is speaking about. Don't be their friends and allies. This is Gog and Magog. This is Gog and Magog. In addition, Allah goes on to say, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. I'm translating correctly. Nothing wrong with my translation of the Quran. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them to be their friends and allies, you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for people who are wicked. That's what they are. That's what they are. And so now we are able to identify Gog and Magog. In my first edition of my book, on Gog and Magog, I came to the conclusion that there was going to be a mighty clash between Gog and Magog. And that mighty clash is the Malhama which the Prophet spoke, in which thousands of nuclear weapons are going to be used. And that's going to create the mushroom clouds, and it's the Dukhan. Dukhan. You're not going to have sunlight in the world for I don't know how many days, maybe weeks, I don't know. No sunlight. Whole world will be covered with smoke. That's coming up. And when that war takes place, there will be a substantial reduction in the population of the world. Maybe only 10% will remain alive. So I came to the conclusion that the Anglo-American Zionist alliance was Gog, and Russia was Magog. Because I could foresee a clash between the two. And I could see that Russia also had that indestructible power that the United States, Britain, and so on. But in the second addition to my book, I said no. That conclusion was premature. And this is why I always say, when I teach and I give my opinion, do not accept my opinion. No. Do not accept my opinion until you are convinced that it is correct. Because if I make a mistake, how will you correct me? Huh? If you simply swallowing everything I say. Now that's a good student. A good student who critically assesses what I teach and will never accept anything I say until he is convinced that it is correct. That was the way I was with my teacher. And that's the way I want you to be with me. I realized that I made a mistake. I came to a premature because I did not have all my facts. Only after writing the book did I learn that they attacked Russia, Gog and Magog. Russia is not Western Christian, Eastern Christian, Kaizendas. And that Christianity is referred to in the Quran as why are you afraid to say? Rome. Not Roman, Rome. Ghulibatil Rum. Surah al-Rum. There's a surah of the Quran called Surah Al-Rum. So when the Quran speaks of Rum, the Quran is speaking about Eastern Christianity, not Western Christianity. The Khazar became Jews and then Christians, and they were able to penetrate Western Christianity and bring about the Jewish-Christian alliance in Western Christianity. Oh, what about Eastern Christianity? When Rome emerged in history, it was in Italy, in the city of Rome. But at that time, Rome worshipped idols. Before Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And then when Constantine became Christian, the Emperor Constantine wanted to get out of this paganism, and he created a new city and called it Constantinople. Constantinople. Mustafa Kemal eventually banned the use of the word Constantinople, and now you must only use the word Istanbul. So I say to Mustafa Kemal, get lost. Get lost, Mustafa Kemal. My Prophet used the word Constantinople. And says, my Prophet used the word Constantinople. That's the name of the city for me. You can call it whatever you want. But since Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam called it Constantinople, that's the word I'm going to use. Mustafa Kemal put that in his pipe and spoke it. So Rome left Italy, and Rome now came to Constantinople. And then in 1456 or 57, when Sultan Fatih conquered the city, then Rome moved from Constantinople, went to Moscow. So the capital of Rome today is Moscow. Since that time to today is Moscow. Okay? And Rome remained fervently Christian. More authentically Christian than Western Christianity. Yes. Until something happened in the First World War. The Russians always wanted to get back Constantinople. The most magnificent church of the Christian world was in Constantinople. It was built more than the year 3 or 4 AD. And it's more than 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, 30,000 years old. It's called Hagia Sophia. Okay? And when Sultan Muhammad Fatih conquered the city, he converted the cathedral, Christian cathedral, to a masjid, which was a very shameful thing. A monstrously shameful thing. To take a Christian church, conquer, and then convert it to a masjid. Shameful and embarrassment to Islam. And on the day when we conquer Constantinople, inshallah, we return that church to Christian. So Russia wanted to get back Constantinople. But the Ottoman Empire stood in the way. And the Ottoman Empire, for centuries, had used all their power against the Eastern Christians. If Greece today hates Muslims, the Greek people hate Islam, hate Muslims. Do you know why? Because the Ottomans used to take Greek children, little boys 10 years of age, because they were able to conquer Greece, and they will convert these children to Islam. And then they'll train them and bring them up to be soldiers. And these then became an elite force in the Ottoman army, the Janissaries. Christian boys. This is the Ottoman Empire. And then the Ottomans would enslave the women, Greek women, and other women of Eastern Europe. And these women would now be slaves and put them in their harem. So the Ottoman Sultan will have 100 wives, 100 slaves, 200 slaves, 700 slaves. The Ottoman Sultans could not marry. No. Not allowed to marry. I thought marriage was half of Iman. So there's a lot of you tonight there who are only half Iman. And nikah was nisful Iman. But the Ottoman sultans could not marry. Why? Because they did not want to have children from wives. They would have rights. The wives would have rights. So if they slept only with slaves, the slaves will have no rights. And when the Sultan died, one of his sons would be chosen to become the new Sultan. And they had a practice for some time that he would kill all his brothers. So they will never have any problem of conflict for succession. No. And so the Ottoman Empire was able to maintain a solid grip of power, uninterrupted power, for so long. They used that power against the Eastern Christians in such a deplorable way that the Eastern Christians today hate Islam. Greece hates Islam. You're not allowed to build a masjid in Greece because of hatred for Islam. That's why they're angry. That's why they hate Islam. So Russia wanted to get back Constantinople. But the Ottoman Empire controlled the Holy Lands. So when they were ready to get the Holy Land from the Ottomans and restore a state of Israel and bring the Jews back to the Holy Land, they needed a war. They needed a big war, and they needed to get the Ottoman Empire against them. Okay? But all through the centuries, Britain and France had been allies of the Ottoman Empire. Britain and France. And Russia was always the enemy. The biggest enemy of all was Russia. All the wars that they fought against Russia. Great hatred for Russia. That's the Ottomans. So how can we get the Ottoman Empire involved in a big war, but Ottomans must not be on our side. Simple. In 1907, Britain and France made an alliance with Russia. That must have been like a thunderbolt for the Ottomans. Britain and France make an alliance with Russia. But how can you get Russia to become our ally? Answer, you offer them Constantinople. The Russians will be delighted. So Britain and France made a secret treaty with Russia, offering to them Constantinople at war breaks out. Once the alliance with Russia was made, it meant that when war breaks out, and everybody knows war is coming, the Ottomans cannot join the war on the side of Britain and France because Russia will then become their ally. So it's a game of chess. Chess. You put all the pieces together to checkmate them. So there's only one road open. Only one road open for the Ottoman Empire, and that is to make an alliance with Germany. That's what they wanted. See? When the war broke out in 1914, I'm doing your homework for you now. If you had to do the research to get this that I'm giving you, it would take you a long time. When war broke out in 1914, okay, the Ottoman Empire was on the losing side. And the Russian troops are advancing. And by 1917 it was all over. By 1917, the Russian troops are now closing in on Constantinople. And Russia is rubbing her hands in glee. We're going to get back Constantinople now. But the Zionists did not want Russia to get Constantinople. So what did they do? Just before Russian troops could take Constantinople, the Zionists struck and had a revolution in Russia and killed the whole royal family. And brought about a new regime in Russia. It was called the Bolshevik Revolution. And the idea was to destroy the Christian foundations of Russia. So it will cease to be Rome. And then Russia became a nuclear power. This is Gog and Magog. It is Gog and Magog which made Russia into a nuclear power. And then Russia became a satellite. Yeah, satellites. And missile technology and so on. This is Gog and Magog. So that's why I came to the conclusion that Russia was Magog. But then, in the 1980s, alhamdulillah, transformation began to take place. And the Berlin Wall collapsed. And then the Soviet Union collapsed. And guess what? Russia is now returning to Christianity. Russia is becoming Rome once again. See?
And so it was wrong for me to say that Russia was Magog and the Anglo-American Israeli alliance was God. That was wrong. I corrected that mistake in my second edition. The answer is that Gog and Magog were present in both camps, and they still have some foothold in Russia. And Gog and Magog are leading both camps to clash. They want these two superpowers to clash with each other. And when the clash takes place, that's going to be the Dukhan, the Malakah.
لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ, you will most certainly fight the Jews. وَلَتَقْتُلُنَّهُمْ, and you will most certainly kill them. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ, at that time even the stones will speak. Because the stones will have a higher sense of morality. Than those stones which inhabit their hearts. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ, at that time even the stones will speak. Ya Muslim, O Muslim, هَذَا يَهُودِيٌّ وَرَائِي فَتَعَالَ فَقْتُلْ, there's a Jew hiding behind me, so come and kill him. Not all Jews. No. Because there will be other Jews who will be with us, standing up to face an Israeli tank, giving their lives in standing up to oppression. So not all Jews. No. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is talking about the Jew who is the agent of oppression. This is the one. There's a Jew hiding behind me, so come and kill him. We are now able, therefore, to offer, and all that we're doing is offering a preliminary opinion of identifying Gog and Magog in terms of the centers of power, not individual. Don't ask me for names, because we have Gog and Magog in Egypt as well now. And I'm reliably informed there are Gog and Magog in Islamabad, in Pakistan as well. And you have Gog and Magog all over the world. So don't ask for names. We now are in a position to offer what can best be described as a preliminary opinion, which is now subject to the critical examination by the Ummah, by the scholars. And a scholar would not take this book and refute it, rip it apart, by simply searching, where can I find a little crack in it? That's not scholarship. A scholar will go through it and see what is there in this which convinces me that it is the truth, and what is there in this where my brother may have fallen short in his analysis or may have erred, and then would respectfully offer an opinion to correct something where I may have gone wrong. That's scholarship. So now we have completed our explanation of the subject of Gog and Magog. It's probably the first time that this kind of an explanation has been offered in our history as an ummah. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us if we have erred, and to kindly increase for us our knowledge of the subject. Ameen.
ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.